In this video, guy orders a bunch, then cancels most of it, wants to keep the discounts. The cheerleaders can break dress code because they're school uniforms? Guess I'm wearing mine. And, hi from Texas, private businesses can still require masks even without a state mandate. Here's how that's going. Guy orders a bunch, then cancels most of it, wants to keep the discounts. Several years ago, I was the manager of one location for a national furniture retailer. We had people come in all the time for our sales and deals. We were always running one. As the manager, I also had the ability to take off a little extra. Depending on the items, I might even take an additional 25% off after the sale price. Way more if the item was something other than furniture. It wasn't possible on everything, but I knew my leeway and when to use it. The other thing we offered up all the time was to remove the delivery charge. So this man comes in and is working with one of my employees. He's looking for a sofa and maybe some end tables. He picks out a nice sofa, and after the sale, it's about $4,000. End tables are another few hundred. Then he talks about how great our sale is. Apparently, my employee tells him if he buys more, we might get him a better deal. This sofa is something I didn't have the ability to discount any further, as it was a loss leader and being sold well below what it could have sold for. So this guy decides to go all out and get a new bed, kitchen table, and chairs, and a few other things. He's well over $10K at this point. So employee sits down to ring him up and calls me over to ask about additional discounts, and I let the guy know we have a great sale and he's already getting a great discount, but I'll waive the delivery fee. He asked for a bit more, and I give an extra 10%. It's all a negotiation. After the 10%, he says if we can take off a bit more, he'll be able to afford a few more things. He mentions some pretty expensive stuff, along with lamps and artwork, so we figure it out, and he gets a free delivery and 20% off. He's out the door. Scheduled delivery for 3 weeks out and puts it all on our store credit card. Best day the employee has had in a long time. A week goes by and the guy calls to cancel the artwork and the lamps. It's not that strange for those items to get canceled. They're mostly overpriced in furniture stores anyway. I take care of it for him. Since he used the store's credit, he's paid us nothing. He won't be charged until 6 months after delivery. Another week goes by and he called us twice more to pare down the order, but the other manager was on duty and is new to the job. We're a few days from delivery and the guy calls up to cancel everything but the sofa and end tables on his order. It sucks for the sales guy, but it happens and he handles it well enough. I buy him lunch. On the phone, I tell the customer I would be happy to cancel the items he requested and I would still give him the free delivery. Never did he ask for an updated price. 6 months go by and he finally looks at his bill. I'm the one that gets the call. It's just screaming from the start. He calls me a cheat and a liar and demands his money back. He also mentions that for all the stress this is causing him, he should refund it all. I know exactly who this is and why they're calling, but I ask him to explain it to me and play dumb a bit. This guy tells me how he canceled much of his order but didn't get the discounts he was promised. He was being charged $4,500, but since he got 20% off, it should only be $3,600, and he wants his $900 plus more for messing up his credit score. Still playing dumb a bit, as if a light bulb is slowly warming up in my skull, I ask him to explain to me why he canceled all the other stuff. He then details how his plan all along was to rack up a huge bill and cancel it, all keeping the discounts. Now I drop the dumb act and lay it out for him. Sir, I see the old order and I'm the manager that was helping you that day. It appears as if there never was any discounts on the sofa or end tables, but you did cancel several items that were highly discounted. I wanted discounts on the sofa. I was promised 20% off my order. You need to credit my account. As a total, you did get 20%, but not equally on each item. Then he went full diva on me. With as much as I spent, I deserve that discount. And if you don't give it to me, I will load up every fucking thing I got and drop it in your parking lot. And fighting back a laugh, I had the privilege of telling him, correction, with what you were going to spend, you could have gotten that discount. With what you did spend, I was happy to extend free delivery to you. Additionally, you may return items within our 60-day return window, but your items were delivered well over 100 days ago. You can feel free to drop them anywhere, but may be charged with littering. He ended the call after a stunned silence. He never called my store again. The cheerleaders can break dress code because they're school uniforms? Guess I'm wearing mine. Way back in 2013, I was a sophomore in high school, and there was a tradition that on Fridays, the cheerleaders, football players, without their pads of course, band members, and the other groups performing wore their uniforms to class. This wasn't a written tradition, and only the cheerleaders and dance teams' uniforms broke dress code. Nobody really batted an eye to it. I wasn't a skirt person, but I like dresses once in a while. I grew up in Texas, and it's still significantly hot in August/September. So one time, while wearing a casual sundress in September, I was pulled out of class and reprimanded because the end of my dress was 4 inches above the knee, when the dress code said no shorter than 2. I pointed out the cheerleaders and dance teams' uniforms every Friday and how they reached mid-thigh at their longest, but was told that was okay because students can wear official school uniforms, and was sent home to change. Clearly, somehow, someone had forgotten I was on the golf team. Immediately, my mind was turning to the next Friday. The school had recently upgraded the golf team uniforms the year prior, and the girls' team uniforms consisted of a short-sleeved collared polo shirt and a skirt. If you don't know what a skirt is, it's essentially a skirt and short shorts combined. It looks like a skirt, but they essentially act like built-in bike shorts, and these fuckers were short. I'd argue shorter than the average cheerleader skirt. So that next Friday, about 3 days later, to my parents' surprise, I was ready to go that morning in my golf uniform, as compared to taking a bag to keep the clothes in to change into after school. But I just said, Fridays, we can wear our uniforms to class. And they accepted without question and took me to school. Well, by second period, I was sent to the office yet again, and the first thing the assistant principal asked me was why I would deliberately disobey her right after our last conversation, and threatened in school suspension. I'll never get anywhere in life by not listening. Yada, yada, yada. When I finally had a chance to get a word in, I said, "But this is my school golf uniform," and I pointed to our school's logo that was sewn into my polo shirt. "You said students can wear official school uniforms to class. Why are the cheerleader uniforms okay and mine isn't? This isn't even a skirt, it's a skort. It has pants." I still remember how pissed off she was. She stared me down for what seemed like a millennia. Then she snapped and told me to get out of her office and go sit in the lobby area. That I knew what she meant, and she would be calling my parents about this blatant disrespect. So I waited and played on my iPod and chatted with the nice secretary, trying to keep myself distracted, because in reality, I had been really trying not to cry. I had massive anxiety when it came to authority, but I still had my naive sense of injustice, and I didn't want to just let this go. After about 20 minutes, she popped her head out and in a very monotone voice told me I could go back to class and to let teachers know I had gotten permission from the front office to wear my uniform. Then she went back in and closed the door before I could even think to respond. I spent the rest of my day dealing with teachers questioning me about my outfit and 1 or 2 calling the front office to double check my claim that I had in fact gotten permission, and went to practice after school as normal before being carpooled back home. My dad met me at the door with a small smirk, and I asked him what in the world happened because I knew he was the go-to contact for my school, so I knew she called him. He explained that when she called and tried to get him to come to the school and get me and talked about punishments for my insubordination, he immediately began to argue with her and admitted he raised his voice quite a bit, asking why I wasn't allowed to wear my sport uniform that the school provided to me as a dress requirement at my golf practice, and mentioned taking this all the way to the school board and resolving this obvious favoritism. He then asked me to not do that again, but that he was proud of me and told me, "I know I had told you never to start a fight, but to always fight back. I always thought physically, but you damn sure took the advice." Hi from Texas. Private businesses can still require masks even without a state mandate. Here's how that's going. I'm a waitress. Our restaurant strictly requires masks while indoors if your meal/beverage hasn't been served and after it's been bussed. The mask mandate honestly wasn't that helpful in corralling unruly customers because they'd either argue that the mandate was not a law so they wouldn't follow it, was unconstitutional so they wouldn't follow it, or was irrelevant because they'd eventually be taking their mask off when their food was served, so they wouldn't follow it. But while the presence of a mandate didn't help much, the lack of a mandate has made things way, way worse. People who previously wore a mask now don't believe it's necessary for their health, or that we have a right to set mask wearing as a store policy. But what they don't understand, and what I'll reiterate for you now, private businesses can have any dress code they want. Ever go to a fancy restaurant that requires suit jackets for men, or a grocery store that requires shoes? Yeah. Where were the freedom fighters then? Anyways, regardless of your opinion on masks, no need to argue with me because the owner makes those calls. My job is to enforce his decisions. Whether that be all customers have to wear face masks covering mouth and nose, or if it were all customers have to wear sleeveless denim vests. I'd have to enforce it if you wanted it so. That's literally part of my job. Our in-house mask mandate at the restaurant remains firmly in place, and I spent my entire shift telling people to comply or leave, then telling them again, then a third time, then getting our larger, more physically intimidating line cook to tell them. By the end of the shift, I was a master at putting my hand up authoritatively and saying, "Sir/ma'am, it's your choice whether or not to wear a mask covering, just as it's our choice to service you in this private business. So comply with our dress code or exit the premises." A few people called the police, or more likely acted as though they were, but at no point did any real authorities bother coming. After my shift ended, I was absolutely exhausted and ready to forget anti-maskers, COVID truthers, and just eat some banana oatmeal. I hit the supermarket on the way home, and the chain still requires masks. As I approached the door, most people were maskless, but stopped short of the entrance to put masks on. When seeing the sign, no problem. The people directly next to me, though, a mom with a classic Karen haircut and a teenage son, approximately 15, didn't. Mom actually did put a tattered, ill-fitting surgical mask on. She wasn't even wearing it correctly, but still better than nothing. Her son, though, didn't break stride, just kept heading into the store. His mom flagged him down and said, "Jeremy, put a mask on. It's policy." Kind of quietly, as though she was trying not to anger him. He said, "I thought we didn't have to do this bullshit anymore. I saw it in the news." His mom explained that businesses could still require a mask even if the state no longer did. At first I was thinking, props to Karen. Her haircut is totally misleading. But her son couldn't just let it end on a nice note. He whined that he didn't bring a mask and he didn't want to walk all the way back to the car to get one. And there wasn't Wi-Fi in the parking lot, so no way was he gonna wait for her in the car. If he had a mask in the car, why would he have to wait for her there? Mom tried to think of a rebuttal, eyeing the policy no exception sign, but seemed too tired to generate one. So she just braced herself and they headed into the store. A greeter stopped the son and said he needed a regulation face covering, but he ignored her, grunting, "Don't have one," and kept walking. The greeter called after him, but couldn't move from her spot by the door, and eventually he was too deep into the aisles to notice. I found all this offensive. However, I was too exhausted from dealing with guys like him professionally to take it on personally. I just went about finding the right color of bananas and trying to get back to my car as quickly as I could. Fast forward to the deli counter. I had taken a ticket and was standing in line. Karen and her son were right nearby. Happily, several people were giving Karen's son the evil eye beside me and keeping a healthy distance from him, but he couldn't have cared less, and neither could his mom. She was placing a long, elaborate deli order and he was picking up lemons in a nearby display and putting them back. Her son was having a loud FaceTime conversation with a friend, expelling his air and his noisy chatter onto shoppers in every which direction. But I tried to put it out of my mind because I just didn't have the bandwidth to deal with people like this one more time tonight. That's when it happened. He coughed, maskless, and directly on the lemons. I was getting ready to say something, but thankfully a deli worker noticed and called him out saying, "Who's coughing?" Looking all around and noticing the kid. "Hey son, you've got to wear a mask to be in here." Karen Jr. shrugged his shoulders, but the deli guy wasn't having it, pulling out the corporate policy sheet, so Karen Jr. looked to his mom for support. She seemed genuinely embarrassed by her son, but not so much so that she would hold him accountable for his dangerous choices. She hurriedly explained, "Oh, he has a mask, but he left it in the car and we parked in the far lot." Deli counter guy was persistent though, saying, "I don't care where he left it, it's the policy. Mask up or head out." He took a few assertive steps in the kid's direction, which I guess was too much for Karen to handle because she threw herself in between her son and the worker. There was still easily 10 plus feet of space between them. He was hardly chesting up to the kid. As Karen triumphantly declared, "The store isn't allowed to have that policy anymore. Didn't you see Governor Abbott's announcement? It was never even a law anyways." That stymied the deli guy, My guess is because he had seen the announcement and he wasn't sure what to make of it, didn't want to risk his job if he really couldn't enforce a mask policy anymore, and had a line piling up at his station so he couldn't argue with her all day. So he stepped back, but not before saying, well, either way, you shouldn't need a law. It's a paragon of selfishness what you're doing. Son, my mother is dead of this disease. Dead in the ground. Never got to meet her granddaughter. She wasn't too much older than your mother. You should think about that. The kid, unblinking, laughed at this guy, not chuckled, full-blown belly laugh cackling. His mother pulled him away, saying he was being rude, but didn't make him apologize, let alone apologize herself. I placed my order, told the guy how despicable that exchange was, and apologized for his loss, and that was that, or so I'd hoped. I prayed I'd be able to avoid them for the rest of my trip out. Lo and behold, just as I was about to check out, I realized I was out of plastic wrap. I always have leftovers, so I needed to go for the wrap. Didn't matter how close to checkout I was. I doubled back, holding my breath, no pun intended, and sure enough, the mother-son super spreaders were stationed at the end cap having an argument with a clerk. As best as I could figure it from the bits and pieces I picked up, customers were complaining about his coughing enough to motivate a manager to confront the family. The manager was physically intimidating, so I guessed he was the staff's go-to guy for confrontations, but it became immediately apparent he didn't have a personality for conflict. His name was Chet. Name tag, and he was a human teddy bear at like 6'5" and 300 pounds. He had, to his credit, managed to get Karen's cart away from her, holding it to the side so they couldn't continue shopping until her son put his mask on. But now Chet was pleading with Karen, please don't yell at me. I can't understand you when you're yelling. Karen was going off on Chet about the laws he'd broken, the discrimination he was enacting against her poor son, how the entire store had been harassing a minor child since they entered, and how the news and the corporate office would hear about this and he'd be out of a job and no one is hiring right now, so he better be careful. Chet seemed genuinely surprised as he tried and failed to communicate to Karen with gentle reassurance of, I'm trying to help you actually, ma'am. I don't want to harass anyone. I want to work this out. The situation at hand, though, is that you can't continue to shop until your son conforms to our corporate masking policy for the well-being of the communities we serve, all right? Help me, help you. Meanwhile, as Karen was preaching, well, screeching, the innocence of Karen Jr., her son was actively berating her, telling her she was embarrassing and ineffective and she was so stupid for wasting time arguing with these people, and he wanted to just ignore them and keep shopping. He was a toothpick and Chet was a redwood, so I don't know in what universe he thought he'd ignore the situation and continue about his business, but oh well. Anyways, at this stage, I realized it was disrespectful to just be a voyeur to the spectacle. I would either have to speak up or move on with my shopping. Maybe this was the straw that broke my back after the day I'd had at work. Maybe I was just on autopilot, or maybe I felt sympathy for Chet. Probably a mix of all three. But my mask-enforcing persona roared to life. Luckily, I was also still wearing my work clothes, including my name tag, or this might have not worked. I stormed over with my most authoritative manager of the manager's swagger and said, excuse me, you're creating a disturbance. Do we have a problem here? Poor Chet started trying to explain and remove me from the situation, thinking I was a concerned customer who was upset by the disruption of their altercation, or worse, a third member of the Karen party. But I just fell into my script, which I had down cold at this point, reciting, sir, ma'am, you have a choice as to whether or not you like to wear a mask, and as a private business, we have a choice as to the dress code we'd like to set for our customers. You have two options as to how we can proceed from here. Karen just kept talking over me while her son bitched at her to stop engaging with us and keep shopping, including this gem of a line. They're literally lower than rent-a-cops. They are the can-stacking people. Just ignore them. So I went into the Phase 2 script. All right, you have made the choice not to partake in our services, and we have, in turn, made the choice not to service you. Please leave now, or you will be escorted out. If you leave on your own volition, you'll be welcomed back, if dressed appropriately. If escorted out, a permanent ban will be issued. Please note, we have a clear view of your face on our CCTV to reference, as you are not currently wearing a mask. That nearly made Karen Jr.'s head explode. He started shouting obscenities at us, and I just flatly stated my colleague is containing security, getting edgier as he escalated because A, I made the assumption that the store had security, but it was dawning on me that I had no clue whether or not they did, and B, Karen Jr. was physically larger than me, so I thought back to the stories of store workers being attacked, even killed, by anti-maskers for enforcing these policies. For a minute, I wondered if I should have kept my nose out of this business. But Karen stepped up to the plate. Better late than never. She started pulling her son towards the door, insisting, I can't be banned from here. This store is easily closest to the house. Come on, come on. He resisted at first, even intentionally pushing over the end cap display in a rage, to which Chet offered the strong words of, hey now, was that really necessary? When he started destroying property, Karen left him to face security on his own and made a beeline for her car. After about 15 seconds more of kicking stuff around, Karen Jr. realized he was left standing on his own 2 feet without Mummy there to shield him from real-world consequences and absolutely broke down. A wave of terror washed over him, and just as quickly as he'd flown into the initial rage, he bolted for the exit. Chet was so casual about all of this. He turned to me and asked, you don't work here, do you? I've never seen you before, and I explained what I'd been dealing with at work and how I felt obligated to step in as a result, and he sincerely thanked me, even offered me coupons, but chillingly said that while he appreciated the thought behind it, next time I shouldn't get involved. He warned me that some of the anti-maskers had been wholly unstable, hitting or spitting at employees, and they did have a usual security guard, but he was out that day because of an injury an anti-masker inflicted on him at another job site. It's only because he was out that they sent any regular store workers to confront the kid at all. He sighed and said, this is mostly what I've been doing all day. I don't know if it's because I got a calm demeanor or because I look like I don't have a calm demeanor, but either way, I'm always the one they send to deal with these crazies. I was so distracted by all of this, I didn't even end up remembering to get my plastic wrap. I just checked out and headed home as quickly as I could. So stay safe out there, everyone. Wear your masks, keep your distance, get the vaccine, watch out for one another. We'll be through to the other side of this soon. Not as soon as we could be, thanks to people like Karen and Son, but soon.